General Valyriia Monroe, a decorated Black four-star Air Force hero with multiple combat tours, is pulled over, humiliated, and cuffed on her own quiet suburban street by racist cops sneering at her rank over bogus, expired tags. Feel the outrage as they dismiss her service. But hold your breath for the twist. Her one-com phone call to the Pentagon unleashes immediate federal intervention, ending their careers instantly. Witness the stunning moment raw prejudice collides with ultimate authority. This is the story America needs to see. The twilight-draped Oakwood Hills in hues of lavender and bruised plum. A soft Midwestern evening settling over the meticulously kept lawns and slumbering brick colonials. Inside her Lexus LS 500, the smooth baritone of Sam Cooke filled the quiet luxury of the cabin. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh yes, it will. General Valyriia Val Monroe, United States Air Force, hummed along, the melody a bittersweet echo of her past. Her father, a man forged in the fires of Birmingham's civil rights struggle, used to play this song, his voice thick with conviction, before heading out to marches where hope wrestled daily with the brutal reality of billy clubs and snarling dogs. Tonight, Val, 54 and a four-star general, was returning from a different kind of engagement, a veterans charity gala just outside Cincinnati. Her mess dress uniform jacket, heavy with the constellation of her rank and ribbons earned over 30 years of service, including 3 demanding tours commanding logistics in the Middle East, lay folded neatly on the passenger seat. The deep blue fabric seemed to absorb the fading light, a silent testament to a life dedicated to a nation that still, too often, seemed unsure how to embrace her fully. She turned onto Sycamore Ridge Drive, her street. The familiar rhythm of suburban life, sprinklers whispering across fescue grass, the distant chime of an ice cream truck, the silhouette of a teenager skateboarding under a streetlight usually brought a sense of decompression, a shedding of the immense weight of command. But tonight, a different kind of tension prickled the air, an unseen static that had been humming beneath the surface of her life for as long as she could remember. Then, the world exploded in flashing red and blue. Reflected fiercely in her rearview mirror, the lights painted the interior of her car in stark, alarming pulses. A siren wailed briefly, unnecessarily loud in the quiet neighborhood before cutting off. Val's heart gave a familiar, unwelcome lurch, not of fear, exactly, but of a weary, resigned dread. She signaled, pulled smoothly to the curb beneath the amber glow of a street lamp, and killed the engine. Sam Cooke was silenced mid-phrase. She watched in the side mirror as 2 figures emerged from the Oakwood Hills Police Department cruiser. The first, approaching her driver's side window, was broad-shouldered, with a tightly clipped buzz cut revealing a scalp flushed pink by the sun. His movements were sharp, almost aggressive. The second, younger, leaner, lingered near the back of the squad car, his posture less assured, his gaze flickering nervously between his partner and her Lexus. Val lowered her window, the expensive mechanism purring softly. The officer leaned down, his face close. His eyes, pale blue and narrowed, swept over her face, her evening gown visible beneath the seatbelt, before settling somewhere around her chin. He smelled faintly of stale coffee and aftershave. License and registration, ma'am? His voice was flat, devoid of courtesy. Officer Dean Coulter, his name tag read. Age 38, maybe 40. The kind of man who looked perpetually annoyed. Val retrieved her military ID and driver's license from her clutch, along with the electronic proof of registration stored on her phone. She handed them over calmly. Is there a problem, officer? Her tone was even professional. Decades of command had taught her the power of controlled composure. Coulter took the documents, barely glancing at the 4-star insignia clearly visible on her military ID. He squinted at her Ohio driver's license, then shone his flashlight beam onto her rear license plate. Tags look expired, he grunted, straightening up slightly. He tapped the roof of her car. Step out of the vehicle, please. A ripple of disbelief, quickly suppressed, went through Val. Officer, the registration was updated electronically last month. It should be current in your system. Perhaps there's a lag? Coulter's lips tightened into something resembling a smirk. He ignored her explanation. I said, step out of the vehicle. His voice had acquired a harder edge. Val unbuckled her seatbelt. This was absurd. She was General Valyriia Monroe. She briefed the Joint Chiefs. She commanded thousands. Yet here, on her own street, under the watchful eyes of her neighbors who were now beginning to emerge onto their porches, drawn by the flashing lights, She was being treated like a common suspect. She pushed the door open and stepped out, her heels sinking slightly into the soft grass of the verge. She stood tall, her posture instinctively falling into the ramrod straightness honed by years of military discipline. Coulter's eyes flickered down, catching the glint of the heavy, custom-made Air Force insignia ring on her right hand, 4 stars set in white gold. A flicker of something crossed his face. Surprise? Annoyance? He quickly masked it. "I am General Valyriia Monroe, United States Air Force," she stated clearly, her voice carrying in the quiet night air. "My registration is current. I request you verify it through your system before proceeding." Coulter chuckled, a dry, unpleasant sound. "Sure you are, lady." "General, huh? Heard that one before." He gestured towards the gleaming hood of her Lexus. "Hands on the hood." Now, behind him, the younger officer, Ridley, shifted his weight. Val saw the hesitation in his eyes, the flicker of uncertainty. He looked barely out of his teens, maybe 24. He knew this was wrong. Or at least, he suspected it. "Officer Coulter," Val began, keeping her voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath the surface, "this is unnecessary. I am cooperating. Please, just run the registration." But Coulter wasn't listening. He stepped forward abruptly, grabbing her left wrist. Val flinched, not from pain, but from the sheer violation of it. "I said, hands on the hood," he barked. Before she could react further, he twisted her arm behind her back with surprising force. The metallic ratchet sound of handcuffs closing echoed unnaturally loud. Cold steel bit into the delicate skin of her wrists, tight and unforgiving. He wrenched her other arm back, securing the second cuff. Pain shot up her arms, sharp and demeaning. Humiliation washed over her, hot and suffocating. She could feel eyes on her. Mrs. Henderson from 3 doors down, clutching her rope. Young Marcus Bell, the high school junior she'd spoken to just last month at career day, his phone held up, recording. His voice, shaky but clear, cut through the night. "Hey, leave her alone. That's General Monroe. She spoke at my school." Coulter ignored the boy, pushing Val slightly forward against her car. He muttered under his breath, loud enough for her to hear, the words laced with a venomous blend of condescension and prejudice. "Y'all always got excuses. Always gotta make it difficult. Y'all." The word hung in the air, heavy and ugly. It wasn't just about expired tags, if it ever was. It was about her skin color. It was about her daring to exist in this neighborhood, in this car, perhaps even in the position she held. Her mind flashed, unbidden, to her son, Terrell. 19 years old, a pre-law student at Howard. Pulled over just last month driving her old sedan, cited for swerving, though Terrell swore he'd been driving perfectly straight. The fear in his voice when he called her, the tremor beneath the forced bravado. "It's okay, Mom. They let me go. Just a warning." But it wasn't okay. It was never okay. Standing there, cuffed on her own street, the highest-ranking black woman in the Air Force treated like a criminal by a local cop with a chip on his shoulder and prejudice in his eyes, Val felt a despair deeper than any battlefield fatigue. Will this ever end? The question wasn't just for her, but for Terrell, for Marcus filming on his phone, for every black face that had ever been unjustly stopped, questioned, doubted, or harmed simply for existing. Sam Cooke's hopeful melody felt like a distant, mocking memory. Change hadn't come nearly fast enough. The holding cell at the Oakwood Hills police station was aggressively sterile and profoundly isolating. A bare metal bench, cold beneath Val's evening gown, now wrinkled and faintly smelling of Coulter's sweat from the struggle. A stainless steel toilet and sink combination gleamed harshly under fluorescent lights that hummed with an irritating persistence. There were no windows, only solid cinderblock walls painted a depressing institutional beige. The air was thick with the ghosts of past occupants, stale fear, lingering anger, cheap disinfectant failing to mask desperation. Val sat ramrod straight on the bench, the handcuffs removed but the phantom pressure still tingling on her wrists. They hadn't formally booked her, leaving her in this limbo while Coulter presumably wrote his report, likely embellishing the narrative to justify his actions. Ridley had avoided eye contact throughout the ride to the station, his silence a heavy, complicit weight. Tom stretched, thick and slow. Val closed her eyes, forcing herself to breathe deeply, employing the calming techniques she'd learned years ago at survival training. Panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. Anger, cold and sharp, was a tool she could wield, but it needed focus. Right now, she needed clarity. She thought of the chain of command, the protocols, the system she believed in, served, and occasionally had to fight from within. The cell door rattled, and a key turned in the lock. A woman entered, Sergeant Maria Gonzalez, a according to her name tag. She was maybe in her late 40s, with tired lines around her eyes but a spark of intelligence within them. She carried a clipboard, but her gaze held something other than bureaucratic indifference. It held recognition. "General Monroe?" Gonzalez asked softly, closing the door quietly behind her. She glanced back towards the corridor, lowering her voice further. "I saw the arresting report come through. Coulter, he's got a reputation." She paused, her expression a mixture of professional caution and personal empathy. "I recognized your name. My cousin served under your command at Ramstein. Sergeant First Class Mateo Diaz?" "Logistics." Val nodded slowly. "I remember Sergeant Diaz. Excellent NCO. Dedicated. A small connection, but in this place it felt significant." Gonzalez offered a faint smile. "He always spoke highly of you, General. Said you were tough but fair." Her eyes scanned Val's disheveled appearance, the lingering red marks on her wrists. The professional mask slipped slightly, revealing dismay. This is outrageous. Expired tags? Coulter knows better." She hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "Look, I can't interfere directly with his arrest, not without cause he hasn't documented yet. But what I can do," she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, standard-issue station cell phone. "You get one call. Officially, you haven't requested it yet." Unofficially, she placed the phone discreetly on the bench beside Val. "Make it count, General. I'll keep Coulter busy with paperwork for 15 minutes. Gratitude surged through Val, warming the chill of the cell. "Thank you, Sergeant Gonzalez." "Thank you. Just doing my job," Gonzalez murmured, though her eyes said more. "Protect and serve. Sometimes that means protecting people from certain officers." She gave a curt nod and exited, locking the door behind her. Val picked up the phone, her fingers surprisingly steady. She knew exactly who to call. She dialed a number ingrained in her memory, a direct line to the Pentagon secured network. It bypassed layers of administrative assistance, ringing straight through to the office of Major General Raymond Pierce. Ray Pierce, 48, sharp, ambitious, and fiercely loyal. Val had been his mentor 20 years ago when he was a hotshot young captain. She'd seen his potential, guided him, and watched him rise. Now he was Director of Operations for the Air Force Staff, a position of significant influence. The phone clicked, then Pierce's familiar voice, crisp and alert, came on the line. "Pierce." "Ray, it's Val." There was a half-second pause, then concern colored his tone. "Val? Is everything all right? You sound strained. You were at that gala tonight, weren't you?" Val kept her voice level, devoid of hysterics, channeling the calm she projected in crisis situations. "Ray, I need your help. I'm currently being detained. In a holding cell. Oakwood Hills Police Department, Ohio." Silence on the other end. Then, disbelief sharpening his voice. "Detained? General, what in God's name happened? Are you okay? Were you in an accident?" "No accident, Ray," Val said, the steel entering her voice now. "I was pulled over for allegedly expired tags. The arresting officer, Dean Coulter, badge number 714, refused to verify my registration or acknowledge my identification. He became aggressive and placed me under arrest. His partner, Officer Kyle Ridley, badge number 928, stood by." She took a breath. "Ray, I'm in cuffs." "Well, I was in cuffs. In my own neighborhood. This cannot stand. These officers, their behavior was egregious, racially motivated, and an insult to the uniform I wear and the country I serve. They need to be stopped." Pierce's response was immediate, the shock replaced by cold fury. "Oakwood Hills, Ohio. Officers Coulter and Ridley." "Got it. General, sit tight. I'm making calls. This ends now." The line clicked dead. Val leaned back against the cold wall, the phone feeling heavy in her hand. She knew Ray. He was a whirlwind of focused action when roused. He wouldn't just call the local chief. He'd go higher. Much higher. Within what felt like minutes, though it might have been 10, the quiet hum of the police station outside her cell door erupted into controlled chaos. She heard unfamiliar voices, sharp and authoritative, echoing down the hallway. Raised voices, then suddenly subdued ones. The distinct cadence of federal agents. The cell door was unlocked again, but this time it wasn't Sergeant Gonzalez. Two men in dark suits stood there, flanking a stern-faced woman with an FBI badge clipped to her belt. Behind them, Val caught a glimpse of Officer Coulter, his face pale, his usual smugness replaced by wide-eyed panic as a senior police official, likely the chief, summoned from home, spoke to him in low, furious tones. Another officer was collecting Coulter's badge and service weapon. Ridley stood nearby, looking utterly lost, white as a sheet. The FBI agent stepped forward. "General Monroe?" "Agent Serrano, FBI Cincinnati Field Office. We received a call from the Secretary of Defense's office. You're free to go." We have transportation waiting for you. Val stood slowly, smoothing her gown as best she could. Relief washed over her, but it was mingled with a profound sadness and a simmering anger that hadn't dissipated. It had taken a call to the Pentagon, an intervention from the highest levels of the military and federal government, to rectify what should have been a non-event, to counter the blatant abuse of power by one prejudiced local cop. As she walked out of the cell, leaving the cold beige walls behind, her mind flashed back, further than Terrell's traffic stop, further than the microaggressions that had peppered her career, the surprise when she spoke eloquently, "You're so articulate." For a black woman, the double takes at high-level briefings, the subtle questioning of her authority. She flashed back to Birmingham, Alabama, 1968. She was 6 years old, holding her mother's hand, watching grainy television footage of civil rights marchers facing down high-pressure fire hoses, the water tearing signs from their grasp, tumbling bodies like rag dolls. She remembered the tight clench of her mother's fist, the fierce, whispered promise, "We will overcome. We have to." She had overcome. She had soared, literally and figuratively, reaching heights few women, and even fewer black women, had ever attained. They called her a trailblazer, a symbol of progress. Yet, tonight, on a quiet suburban street, the shadow of those fire hoses, the echo of that deep-seated prejudice, had reached out and tried to pull her back down. The system had worked for her this time because of her rank, because of her connections. But what about all the others? The Terrells? The countless black men and women without a direct line to the Pentagon? Sergeant Gonzalez met her eye as she passed the front desk. A small, almost imperceptible nod passed between them, in acknowledgement of the absurdity, the injustice, and the small act of resistance that had started the chain reaction. Val nodded back, a silent promise forming in her mind. This wasn't just about clearing her name or ending two officers' careers. This had to be about something bigger. The air inside the Cincinnati federal courthouse crackled with anticipation and the low hum of fluorescent lights. National media trucks lined the street outside, their satellite dishes aimed skyward like metallic sunflowers hungry for the latest development. Inside courtroom 8B, the gallery was packed, stern-faced military personnel in dress uniform, local activists clutching handmade signs, curious onlookers, and rows of journalists scribbling furiously into notebooks or tapping silently on laptops. The trial of former Officer Dean Coulter, charged with deprivation of rights under color of law and perjury, had become a national focal point. Oakwood Hills Police Department, facing a separate civil suit and intense public scrutiny, had moved quickly to terminate Coulter after the initial investigation, but the federal charges carried the weight of systemic consequence. Coulter sat at the defendant's table, flanked by his lawyers. His sunburn had faded, replaced by a courtroom pallor. The smugness Val remembered was gone, replaced by a sullen resentment that radiated off him in waves. He avoided looking towards the prosecution's side, where Val sat composed, flanked by Air Force legal counsel and Assistant U.S. Attorney Mariana Flores, a sharp, relentless prosecutor known for her meticulous preparation. The prosecution had methodically built its case. They presented the dashcam footage from Coulter's cruiser, which conveniently malfunctioned just before the physical arrest but clearly showed Val's calm demeanor and identification. They showed Marcus Bell's cell phone video, shaky but damning, capturing Coulter's aggression and the audible click of the handcuffs. They brought Sergeant Gonzalez to the stand, who testified about Coulter's history of escalated interactions with minority residents, carefully navigating departmental loyalty while confirming the irregularity of the stop and Val's detention. Then came the revelations about Coulter's past. A sealed 2017 settlement surfaced, stemming from an excessive force complaint filed by a young black man during a traffic stop. More damaging still, photos emerged, anonymously leaked, showing a younger Coulter at a backyard barbecue, grinning, a Confederate flag tattoo clearly visible on his forearm. His defense team objected vehemently, but Judge Harrison allowed it, ruling it relevant to establishing potential bias. The pivotal moment arrived when Kyle Ridley took the stand. The former rookie who had resigned from the force shortly after the incident looked haunted. He spoke in a low, trembling voice, recounting the events of that evening. He admitted Val had been polite, that he'd seen her military ID, that he hadn't believed the tags were expired, and that he'd felt Coulter's actions were unwarranted. Prosecutor Flores approached the witness stand, her voice calm but probing. "Officer Ridley, former Officer Ridley, why didn't you intervene? Why didn't you stop Officer Coulter?" Ridley swallowed hard, his eyes darting nervously towards Coulter, then back to Flores. I was scared. Scared of Coulter. Scared of losing my job. I was the new guy. You don't cross senior officers like that. So, you stood by while a 4-star general was wrongfully handcuffed and humiliated? Yes, Ridley whispered, shame coloring his face. Flores pressed gently. Did Officer Coulter say anything to you, either during the stop or later at the station, about General Monroe's race or gender? Ridley hesitated, tears welling in his eyes. He took a shaky breath. On the ride back to the station, I asked him if he really thought she was lying about being a general. He laughed. Ridley's voice broke. He said, doesn't matter who she thinks she is. She's just another angry black woman trying to pull rank. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. The words hung in the air, ugly and undeniable, stripping away any pretense that this was simply about procedure or expired tags. It was the raw, unfiltered voice of prejudice. When Val finally took the stand, a hush fell over the room. She wore her service dress uniform, the 4 stars gleaming on her shoulders, her ribbons a testament to a lifetime of dedication. She recounted the events calmly, factually, her voice steady but infused with the quiet authority she commanded. She spoke of her service, her tours overseas, the responsibility she held. Then, looking directly at the jury, her voice resonated with controlled power and profound sorrow. For 30 years, I have worn this uniform. I have served this country, defended its constitution, and upheld its ideals, often in dangerous and difficult places. I have commanded troops of all races, backgrounds, and beliefs united by a common purpose. I believed, perhaps naively, that my rank, my record, my service would afford me the basic dignity and respect owed to any citizen, let alone a senior military officer. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the courtroom, settling briefly on Coulter. But on that evening, on my own street, none of that mattered. My uniform became invisible. My rank was dismissed. My word was doubted. In the eyes of Officer Coulter, I was not General Monroe. I was not a decorated veteran. I was reduced to a stereotype. I was, in his own words, just another angry black woman. I defended this country, her voice thickened slightly, but here, in my own community, I was treated like a threat, a thug in uniform. Her words landed like hammer blows, echoing the frustration and pain of generations. Outside the courthouse, the crowd had swelled. Protesters chanted, their voices a rhythmic wave washing against the stone facade. No justice, no peace. Racist policing must cease. Among them stood Terrell, Val's son. His initial anger had coalesced into a determined resolve. He wasn't just there for his mother, he was there for himself, for the countless others who looked like him and faced the same scrutiny, the same assumptions. Beside him stood Jasmine Lee, a young Korean-American community organizer. She carried a sign that read, Solidarity Against Hate. Jasmine's family knew this pain intimately. Her younger brother, Brian, had been killed during a police wellness check gone tragically wrong 2 years earlier. She had met Terrell at a campus activism meeting, bonding over shared experiences of systemic injustice, albeit through different lenses. Jasmine bumped her shoulder gently against Terrell's. This isn't just your fight, Terrell, she said, her voice firm above the chanting. When they profile your mom because she's black, when they profile my cousin because he wears a turban, when they detain my undocumented neighbor, it's all connected. It's the same system treating us like we don't belong, like we're inherently suspect. Terrell nodded, looking at the diverse faces around him. Black, white, Latino, Asian, young, old. He felt a surge of something powerful, something that pushed back against the weariness he'd inherited. Hope, maybe, or just the strength of shared struggle. Yeah, he said, linking his arm through hers. It's ours. The trial wasn't just about Coulter anymore. It was about the system he represented, the fear Ridley embodied, and the collective demand for accountability echoing from the courtroom steps to the highest corridors of power. It was a reckoning long overdue. The late autumn sun cast long shadows across the hallowed grounds of Arlington National Cemetery. A crisp breeze rustled the fallen leaves, whispering through the endless rows of white headstones that marked the final resting places of America's fallen heroes. Val stood before one particular grave, her fingers tracing the raised letters carved into the simple, elegant marble. James Samuel Monroe, SGT, U.S. Army, World War II, Korea, 1924 to 2005, fought for freedom. Her father, the man who had survived segregated barracks and frontline combat overseas, only to return home to fight a different, more insidious war against prejudice and inequality in Birmingham. The man who played Sam Cooke and believed, fiercely, that change would come. Val knelt, placing a single, long-stemmed red rose beside the headstone. The uniform she wore today was her service dress, less formal than the mess dress from the gala or the courtroom, but no less imbued with meaning. The weight on her shoulders felt different now, not just the stars of her rank, but the gravity of recent events, the burden and opportunity of her platform. "We're still fighting, Daddy," she murmured softly, the words carried away by the wind. Coulter was convicted. Deprivation of rights, perjury. He'll serve time. Ridley resigned, testified, maybe he learned something. Maybe not. She sighed, the sound small in the vast silence of Arlington. But it's not enough, is it? Punishing one or two bad apples doesn't fix the orchard. The trial had concluded weeks ago. Coulter received a sentence of 3 years in federal prison. A decision met with mixed reactions, relief from some, frustration from others who felt it wasn't nearly enough. Ridley, facing departmental sanctions and public ostracization even after his testimony, had quietly left law enforcement altogether. The civil suit against Oakwood Hills was ongoing, likely headed towards a substantial settlement. But Val knew that court victories and personnel changes were only part of the equation. True change required digging deeper, addressing the roots of the bias that allowed a Coulter to flourish and a Ridley to remain silent. Leveraging the intense media attention and the backing she now undeniably possessed from the highest levels, she had channeled her anger and frustration into action. She launched Operation Integrity. It wasn't just another sensitivity training module destined to be ignored. It was a comprehensive initiative developed in partnership with military behavioral scientists, sociologists, and community leaders. The core concept involved pairing seasoned military veterans, particularly those from diverse backgrounds who had led integrated units under pressure, with police departments for immersive, scenario-based training focused on de-escalation, implicit bias recognition, and community engagement. The idea was to leverage the discipline, ethical framework, and cross-cultural experience inherent in military leadership to foster a different kind of policing culture. The pilot program was kicking off in Albuquerque, New Mexico, under the enthusiastic partnership of Chief Elena Marquez. Marquez, a respected Latina reformist known for her data-driven approach and commitment to constitutional policing, had reached out to Val shortly after the trial verdict. Val recalled their first video conference call. Chief Marquez, sharp-eyed and pragmatic, hadn't minced words. "General, what happened to you was appalling, but sadly not surprising to many communities we serve. We've been trying to implement reforms here for years: body cams, bias training, stricter use of force policies. Progress is slow. Sometimes it feels like one step forward, 2 steps back. Your Operation Integrity, it sounds like the kind of systemic intervention we need. Bringing in veterans, people who understand command, discipline, and diversity under pressure? That's a perspective my officers might actually listen to." "Change is coming, General," Marquez had said, a determined glint in her eye. "Slowly. Lord, is it ever slow, but it's coming. We just have to keep pushing." Val believed her. Seeing the commitment in Marquez's eyes, hearing about the initial positive feedback from the Albuquerque officers participating in the pilot sessions, skepticism gradually giving way to grudging respect, then genuine engagement. It fueled a cautious optimism within her. A few months later, Val stood on a different kind of hallowed ground, the graduation stage at Howard University School of Law. Below her, rows of bright, eager faces beamed, diplomas clutched in their hands. Among them, searching the crowd, was Terrell. He caught her eye and gave her a wide, proud grin. He had found his path. Inspired, in part, by his mother's ordeal and his conversations with Jasmine Lee, who was now his study partner and close friend, Terrell had decided to specialize in civil rights law. His graduation speech, delivered earlier that day as class valedictorian, had been a powerful call to action, pledging to use his degree not for corporate gain, but to defend the marginalized, to challenge injustice within the legal system itself. He was joining the fight, armed with knowledge and passion. The intergenerational echo of her father's struggle, her own battle, and now Terrell's commitment resonated deeply within Val. The sun glinted off polished brass and crisp white uniforms at the Air Force Academy graduation parade grounds in Colorado Springs. The majestic Rockies formed a stunning backdrop as the band struck up the national anthem. General Valyriia Monroe stood at the reviewing stand, her gaze sweeping over the ranks of newly commissioned second lieutenants. They were a mosaic of America: black, white, Latino, Asian, men and women from every corner of the nation. Their faces held a mixture of pride, excitement, and the solemn understanding of the oath they had just taken. Val thought of her own graduation day decades ago, when faces like hers were far fewer in the ranks. Progress, hard-won and incremental, was visible here, as the final notes of the anthem soared and faded into the clear mountain air. Val brought her hand up in a sharp, precise salute. It wasn't just a salute to the flag or to the graduates, but to the ideal they represented, an ideal of service, of unity, of a nation still striving, imperfectly but persistently, to live up to its promises. Her eyes met those of a young black woman in the front rank, her expression fierce and determined. In that shared glance, Val saw the reflection of her own journey, the continuation of the fight, and the enduring hope that yes, finally, a change is gonna come. The work was far from over, but standing there, witnessing the next generation step forward, Val allowed herself a moment of profound, unshakable faith. The fight for true justice required dismantling systems, brick by painful brick, and building something better in their place. And she, along with countless others, was ready for the labor. Thank you for watching General Monroe's incredible story. We hope it resonated and brought value. If you felt the impact, please like this video, share her powerful journey, and subscribe for more vital narratives that need to be heard.